Hi, welcome back to Alberta Unfiltered. I'm Marilyn Burns, the host, and I'm here today with a very interesting guest, Katherine Kowalchuk. If you like, please subscribe and share. Well, Katherine, I've gotten to know you over a few years, and I find you such an interesting person. We met just a few years ago, and it's been a gradual friendship that's developed. Do you remember how it happened?
Well, I believe that we were first introduced through the COVID debacle that was before us. And I believe that we were on a Zoom call together. At that point, we didn't know who each of us were. But I think after that initial Zoom call, we were introduced further in politics.
Yes, and we came to realize that we both came to the conclusion that Alberta should leave Canada and become its own nation. And our decision hadn't been that far apart. But can you explain how you came to believe that Alberta should leave Canada?
Certainly. Well, I was very skeptical about the COVID mandates that were being forced upon us as Albertans and Canadians.
So it's fair to say that that's sort of entangled with each other, the COVID situation and the Alberta should leave Canada belief.
Well, what happened was at the end of 2020, I was introduced to the idea of Alberta separation through the precursor to the Alberta Prosperity Project known as the Alberta Unity.
Yes, Alberta Unity Project.
And I was approached by some individuals who were starting that group up, and they were looking to engage Albertans of all sorts, including lawyers, with respect to Alberta separation. And before that, I really hadn't given Alberta separation really any thought whatsoever. Early on in my 20s, I was quite politically active. I was the president of the Students' Union at the University of Manitoba. I worked for a Liberal MP in Ottawa the year after I graduated, in between law school. And so I did have political leanings, but...
So were you actually in Ottawa at the time?
Of COVID?
No, between the time you went to university in Manitoba and then went to law school. Did you move to Ottawa?
I did. I was a legislative assistant for Reg Alcock. His office was in Centre Block, and I worked downtown. I lived downtown just a couple of blocks from the Supreme Court of Canada. And that was a very interesting experience, certainly. When I went to law school, though, I took a break from politics for a number of years and then got reacquainted with politics actually in 2015, Where
did you go to law school?
I did my first year at the University of Alberta, and then my first husband and I moved down to Calgary because he got into law school at the University of Calgary. And so I transferred and finished at the University of Calgary.
Interesting.
Yeah. In 2015, I actually was asked to be the nominated candidate, or be considered to be the nominated candidate for the Federal Liberal Party in Signal Hill in Calgary. At the time, I had my own law firm, and I really did not have a strong sense of what I actually stood for politically. That evolved since then. I would have described myself in my 20s as fairly a feminist, a liberal in my thinking. And that there's a idea that as you grow older, the more conservative you become.
That's what they say.
It's probably because we pay so much taxes over our lives and we get sick of it.
We give so many taxes.
Yeah, exactly. So what happened then was I did become the nominated candidate in 2015, but I had to resign that position before the election actually started, and I due to personal circumstances. And so I do see that as a God shot for me. Okay. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I'm glad because fast forward to 2020, COVID hits. And by this point, I am already starting to seek more information about what the truth is.
And you're not in your 20s anymore.
And I'm not in my 20s anymore. And I'm on to going through my second divorce.
Sure.
But with children this time. So it was very different. And I was looking at information that I was falling upon information, UFOs, ancient history, and being reacquainted with the Bible and with God. And so when COVID hit in 2020, and there was a unified message between the media and the government, both my husband and I were very aware of that we might be being played.
Okay, because of the recent research that you had done.
The recent research that I had been delving into, expanding the repertoire of what I was prepared to accept, because, we get conditioned at a very early age to discard certain ideas. And I
just want to stop right there because you're in a very similar timeline to me. There was a period of time where I'd heard of a number of world situations and I discarded them and dismissed those people. And about the same time that you did, I began to think maybe there's something to this. And I was willing to have an open mind.
Yeah, exactly. And then I started meeting more like-minded people and realizing that there was actually a community of people that existed outside of my immediate circle that also shared these opinions. In fact, at one point, before I had actually met my husband, before 2019, I was kind of so lonely in my quest for knowledge that I had actually created a Meetup group in Calgary to discuss these issues with other Calgarians.
How did you find your Meetup group?
I created it.
Okay.
I created it and had one meeting. And then after that one meeting, I ended up meeting my husband. And then he also shared very similar interests that I did, although he was way further down the disclosure path than I was. And I learned a lot from him. And between the two of us, we became, our own best friends and information providers. Right. So, and I had finally somebody to bounce ideas off of.
Then when you had your Meetup group, how did that assist you in moving toward believing Alberta should have become its own nation?
Well, that happened about 2020. Like I said, towards the end of 2020, I was approached by AUP and met Dennis Modry and other folks within that organization at the time. And they gave a very compelling argument about why Alberta, first of all, how Alberta could separate.
Correct.
And why it was so important. And it really seemed to fit nicely with my desire for change and for truth and accountability. And at that point, I decided that, yes, this is a viable option. It's not treasonous. It's not sedition.
Certainly not.
Yeah, it is a viable legal option within Canada. And that's where I started my journey about being an Alberta separatist.
Was there a point in time where you said, I'm in, or was it so gradual you can't point to that time?
I was pretty much in after it became, when I understood the benefits, when I understood the problems within our Confederation system in terms of actually get anything changed from a legal standpoint. And obviously the economics are a no-brainer in terms of equalization. I bought in right away. I didn't know how that was going to look. I'm still very focused on other issues that are very intertwined within separation. Mm-hmm. But at that point, I didn't really appreciate how the Alberta government actually is very intertwined with the Canadian government. Oh. And from my perspective, yeah. And so while I do want Alberta separation, I am very concerned about who's going to lead a new nation of Alberta if we're so lucky to have a successful vote, and what kind of values this new nation is going to embody.
When you say that you saw the benefits of Alberta becoming its own nation, can you summarize what initially you believed those benefits to be? Was it purely economic?
Certainly not. A lot of what I've come to believe revolve around the deterioration of the values that we have in our society.
At that point in time, you considered both the economic benefits and the values change. Is that fair to say?
Mostly at the very beginning, it was economic.
Okay.
Yeah, it was economic, and I really wanted desperately to get out from under the yoke of Ottawa, because I perceived Ottawa at that point as being the bigger threat to our way of life and to the tyranny that we were experiencing. I've shifted from my viewpoints around that have evolved now, learning more about provincial politics, having run in the last provincial election in 2023 for the Independence Party of Alberta, and understanding who the players are within Alberta and what the agendas are, and how the two-party system that we have within Alberta and in Canada are pretty much the same and intertwined.
From the time you decided to pursue the path to Alberta becoming its own nation, it appears to me that you then became active in that effort. Is that fair to say?
Yes, I was at that point. I was speaking with APP, the Alberta Prosperity Project, lending my voice with respect to what I was seeing within our legal profession that was of concern to me, that was an impediment, not mostly around the exercising of our rights and freedoms as in a democratic society.
It seems to me that when you have something in front of you that you believe needs to happen, you're not the kind of person to sit on the sidelines.
That would be accurate. Yeah, I was speaking out before separation. I see things from the cultural perspective mostly now, and that actually informed a lot of what I was speaking about over the last few years, drawing upon my experience in my profession and what I was seeing, and relating that to the broader issue of our culture and the values that we as a society, the worldview that our society has adopted.
We're going to explore that in future videos.
Yes.
So in a nutshell, it's fair to say that since the time a few years ago that you became convinced that it's tremendously beneficial for Alberta to become its own nation outside of Canada, you've been an active player in Alberta and you've never wavered. Is that fair to say?
I think you've summed it up quite accurately, yes.
Katherine, it's just been a real pleasure to talk with you today. If you like what you're hearing from Katherine, I ask you to like and subscribe and stay tuned for future videos. Thank you.
From the mountains to the